On July 26, 2024, Call of Duty published a white paper that explains how they use player skill level to determine matchmaking in their multiplayer games, otherwise known as skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM. Call of Duty says connection quality and time to match are the most important factors it takes into consideration in its matchmaking. But based on what Call of Duty says in this white paper, I think skill level is more important than they're willing to admit to us. To the point that no matter how much some people beg them to remove skill-based matchmaking from their games, it's here to stay. According to the white paper, every Call of Duty player is assigned two numbers that determine their skill. One number is called raw skill, and it determines your skill level in relation to other players. For example, on a scale of 1 to 100, where 1 is the lowest skill player and 100 is the highest skill player, a Call of Duty player with a raw skill score of 50 is right in the middle. The other number is called skill percentile, and it describes what percentile of the player base the player falls into. For example, a player may be in the 90th percentile, which means as far as skill goes, they're better than 90% of the rest of the player base. Players like me. The matchmaking also factors in the difference between the lowest skill players and the highest, which is called skill disparity. Call of Duty tells us that when skill is a factor in the matchmaking, 80 to 90% of players play the game longer and quit matches less frequently. And these are two important key performance indicators, or KPIs, that Call of Duty uses to determine the success of their games. What Call of Duty is trying to avoid is a negative feedback loop, where lower skill players get stomped over and over again and leave the game over and over again until they eventually just stop playing. When this happens, higher skill players become the new lower skill players. And then those players start to get stomped over and over again until they're not happy and they quit matches early and they leave over and over and over again, and the cycle repeats. If this keeps happening for long enough, eventually the game will die, because only the best and most competitive players are still playing, which completely discourages new players from trying Call of Duty games. Since 2019, Call of Duty has periodically tested the effects of weakening and strengthening skill-based matchmaking in their games. And the results of these tests are quite frankly why they will never get rid of it. For example, in early 2024, Call of Duty ran a test where SBMM was weakened for 50% of the North American player base. 90% of the test group had significantly less playtime because their experience in the game was negatively affected. The rest of that test group, the top 10% highest skill players, actually played more often with weakened SBMM. This shows that skill-based matchmaking apparently has a positive impact on the vast majority of the player base, while having a negative impact on the highest skill players. So now we know that skill will always be a major factor in the matchmaking for Call of Duty multiplayer games. But what about engagement optimization matchmaking, or EOMM? Watch this video next to find out.